Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paribrajikacharya Stotra Sata Sri Śrimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paribrajikacharya Stotra Sata Sri Śrimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Guru Parampara Ki Jai. Sad Goswami Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Purushottam Kshetra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Grantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam Ki Jai. Gauda Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Hari Hari Bol. So a reading from Śrimad Bhāgavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 31, texts 41 and 42. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasim Tato Jayam Mudirayet. I'll read Sanskrit. Yam manyate patim mohan. Manmayam rishabhayatim. Stritvang stri sangatak prapto. Vithapatya griha pradam. Yang manyate pating mohan. Manmayam rishabhayatim. Stritvang stri sangatak prapto. Vithapatya griha pradam. Yang manyate pating mohan. Manmayam rishabhayatim. Stritvam stri sangatak prapto. Vithapatya griha pradam. Yamanyate patim mohan. Manmayam rishabhayatim. Stritvang stri sangatak prapto. Vithapatya griha pradam. Yamanyate pating mohan. Manmayam rishabhayatim. Stritvam Stri Sangatak Prapto Pitapatya Griha Pradam
Yammanyate patim mohan
Yamanyate Patim Mohan
Manmayam Vrishabhayatim
Manmayam Vrishabhayatim
Stritvam Stri Sangata Prapto
Stritvam Stri Sangatak Prapto
Vitapatya Griha Padam
Tapatya Griha Pradam
Yamanyate pating mohan
Yamanyate Pating Mohan
Manmayam Rishabhayatim
Manmayam Vrishabhayatim
Stritvam Stri Sangatah Prapto
Stritvam Stri Sangatak Prapto
Vittapatya Graha Pradam
Vitapatya Griha Pradam. Please. Yamanyate Patim Mohan Manmayam Vrishabhayatim Stritvam Stri Sangatak Prapto Vitapatya Griha Pradam Yamanyate Pating Mohan Manmayam Vrishabhayatim Stritvam Stri Sangatak Prapto Vitapatya Griha Pradam Yam, which Manyate, she thinks, Patim, her husband, Mohat, due to illusion, Matmayam, my Maya, Rishabha, in the form of a man, Ayatim, coming, Stritvam, the state of being a woman, Stri Sangataha, from attachment to a woman, Praptaha, obtained, Vita, wealth, Apatya, progeny, Griha, house, Pradam, bestowing. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. A living entity who, as a result of attachment to a woman in his previous life, has been endowed with the form of a woman, foolishly looks upon Maya in the form of a man, her husband, as the bestower of wealth, progeny, house, and other material assets. Purport. From this verse, it appears that a woman is also supposed to have been a man in her previous life. And due to his attachment to his wife, he now has the body of a woman. Bhagavad Gita confirms this. A man gets his next life's birth according to what he thinks of at the time of death. If someone is too attached to his wife, Jai Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai. If someone is too attached to his wife, naturally he thinks of his wife at the time of death, and in his next life he takes the body of a woman. Similarly, if a woman thinks of her husband at the time of death, naturally she gets the body of a man in the next life. In the Hindu scriptures, therefore, woman's chastity and devotion to man is greatly emphasized. A woman's attachment to her husband may elevate her to the body of a man in her next life, but a man's attachment to a woman will degrade him, and in his next life he will get the body of a woman. We should always remember, as it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, that both the gross and subtle material bodies are dresses. They are the shirt and coat of the living entity. To be either a woman or a man only involves one's bodily dress. The soul in nature is actually the marginal energy of the Supreme Lord. Every living entity being classified as energy is supposed to be originally a woman, or one who is enjoyed. In the body of a man, there is a greater opportunity to get out of the material clutches. There is less opportunity in the body of a woman. In this verse, it is indicated that the body of a man should not be misused through forming an attachment to women and thus becoming too entangled in material enjoyment, which will result in getting the body of a woman in the next life. A woman is generally fond of household prosperity, ornaments, furniture, and dresses. She is satisfied when the husband supplies all these things sufficiently. The relationship between man and woman is very complicated, but the substance is that one who aspires to ascend to the transcendental stage of spiritual realization should be very careful in accepting the association of a woman. In the stage of Krishna consciousness, however, such restriction of association may be slackened, because if a man's and woman's attachment is not to each other but to Krishna, then both of them are equally eligible to get out of the material entanglement and reach the abode of Krishna. As it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, anyone who seriously takes to Krishna consciousness, whether in the lowest species of life, or a woman, or of the less intelligent classes, such as the mercantile or laborer classes, will go back home, back to Godhead, and reach the abode of Krishna. A man should not be attached to a woman, nor should a woman be attached to a man. Both man and woman should be attached to the service of the Lord. Then there is the possibility of liberation from material entanglement for both of them. I'll read the second verse, text 24 also now. Tam atmano vijaniyat patya patya grihatmakam daivo pasaditang mrityung mrigayor gayanang yatha. Translation. A woman, therefore, should consider her husband, her house, and her children to be the arrangement of the external energy of the Lord for her death, just as the sweet singing of the hunter is death for the deer. So we have instructions for both the man and the woman here. Purport. In these instructions of Lord Kapila Dev, it is explained that not only is woman the gateway to hell for man, but man is also the gateway to hell for woman. It is a question of attachment. A man becomes attached to a woman because of her service, her beauty, and many other assets, and similarly, a woman becomes attached to a man for his giving her a nice place to live, ornaments, dress, and children. It is a question of attachment for one another. As long as either is attached to the other for such material enjoyment, the woman is dangerous for the man, and the man is also dangerous for the woman. But if the attachment is transferred to Krishna, both of them become Krishna conscious, and then marriage is very nice. Srila Rupa Goswami therefore recommends anasaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjata nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchate. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-255. Man and woman should live together as householders in relationship with Krishna, only for the purpose of discharging duties in the service of Krishna. Engage the children, engage the wife, and engage the husband, all in Krishna-conscious duties. And then all these bodily or material attachments will disappear. Since the via medium is Krishna, The consciousness is pure, and there is no possibility of degradation at any time. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'll just read the two verses again. A living entity who, as a result of attachment to a woman in his previous life, has been endowed with the form of a woman, foolishly looks upon Maya in the form of a man, her husband, as the bestower of wealth, progeny, house, and other material assets. A woman, therefore, should consider her husband, her house, and her children to be the arrangement of the external energy of the Lord for her death, just as the sweet singing of the hunter is death for the deer. So who is Kapila Dev speaking to here? His mother. His mother obviously is in a woman's body. So he's giving good instruction to her how to establish herself in Krishna consciousness, how to become detached from material existence, how to become fully devoted to him, to the Lord. And obviously these instructions are for all of us. Being in the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, they give us directions which we all need to take very seriously. So we have to hear these things with submission. If we try to analyze and think, why is there some kind of discrimination against women or discrimination against men? That's not what's being described here. What's being described here is on the material platform, we have a material body, we have certain material duties, material activities, whether we're man or woman, higher class, lower class. But the real goal of life for each, man, woman, upper class, lower class, this body, that body, is to become Krishna conscious. Is to become Krishna conscious. And Prabhupada starts off in the purport of the first verse. He explains explains the nature of attachment, because attachment is really the binding force of remaining in the material existence. We may be attached to a relative, to a friend, to a man or a woman, or even to an animal. But this attachment, when it's directed towards the material energy, separate from Krishna, it's called Maya, that illusion, that which is not. That attachment is an illusion. It doesn't really exist. It has no reality. It's just a temporary situation that you've come into in this material body, in this particular lifetime, and you had many, many before this body, before this life. We all have had so many bodies since time immemorial. We're changing these bodies one after another, becoming attached, and then having to ultimately give up our attachment and take another body. And then we begin the whole process all over again. It doesn't matter a human form, animal form, bug form, tree form, fish form. All living entities are becoming attached to their situations. We all know the story. We've heard the story of Indra. He became a hog for some time. And after a certain period, the demigods needed him back in his kingdom to govern, do whatever he needed to do. So they came to the earth planet where Indra was in his hog's body, and they said, now it's time to go back to the kingdom of heaven with all of your enjoyments and sense gratification and your body of Indra. And Indra, in the form of the hog, says, no, I want to stay here with all of my hog family and my hog and my stool and my mud. This is pure enjoyment for me. So even in the hog's body, Indra, who had previously experienced the pleasures of Indraloka, became attached to the pleasures of the hog. So this is the psychology of the jiva soul. Prabhupada describes in the purport, we are neither man, woman, male, female. We're female in a spiritual sense, but not in the body. We are the marginal energy of the Lord, Tatastha Shakti. By nature, the servant of Krishna, meant to become attached to Krishna. So this same tendency for attachment becomes directed to matter in our material existence. We're born in a certain body, we come out in a certain life, we become conditioned by the people that we associate with, by our friends, by our relatives, by all of the external features of the world and the society in which we live. We become conditioned by these things, we become attached to these things just by the very nature of our being. The jiva, the marginal spirit, the nature is to become attached. But we are misguided by ignorance since time immemorial. Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam etunanena konteya jagat viparivartate. This material nature, Krishna says, is very difficult to overcome. Very difficult to overcome. Three modes of material nature, ignorance, passion, and goodness, have got us by the neck, by the throat. Sometimes ignorance is prominent, sometimes passion is prominent, sometimes goodness is prominent, sometimes we're in a higher body, sometimes a lower body. And we don't know how to we don't even realize that we're in this cycle over and over and over, samsara. This is what we're taught by our acharyas, by those who are in knowledge. Taking one body after another. Yam yam bhapi smaran bhavam chajatyante kalevaram. What's the next line? Tam tam evati konteya sadatad bhava bhavitaha. Yes, in the first purport, Bhagavad Gita confirms this. He says, from this verse it appears that a man is also supposed to have been a man in her previous life, and due to his attachment to his wife, he now has the body of a woman. Bhagavad Gita confirms this. Yes, that verse, yam yam bhapi smaran bhava. Whatever we're thinking at the time of death, whatever we become attached to, that body we get in the next life. So that's the natural cycle of things in this material world. So how to get out of that? In the verse, Krishna says, Daivihi eshi gunamayi mama maya durati mam eva e prapadyante mayam etam taranti te. By surrendering to me. Very simple process. Sounds simple anyway. Very simple. You just surrender to Krishna. Okay, Krishna, I surrender. But the problem is we have been in this material world for so many, as I said, from time immemorial, through so many births. It's difficult to break the attachments to material nature. Every day we struggle with that. Isn't it a fact? We all struggle to get up early in the morning, we struggle to chant our rounds, we struggle to stay awake in the Bhāgavatam class, to worship the deities and chant 16 rounds a day, follow the 4 regulated principles. It's a struggle. And Prabhupada said one occasion, it's not that Maya is strong, it's that your determination is weak. Maya is strong for sure, that's correct, but your determination is weak. So speaking to all of us, I'm not speaking to you, I'm speaking to all of us, even to myself. Our determination, our resolve to surrender to Krishna, to practice Krishna consciousness, to follow strictly is weak. And we have to rise above that influence that brings us back down. We tend to slip back into our old ways, into our old habits, our old ways of thinking sometimes. We have our ups and our downs. But we have to get back on the track. Even if we go down, we have to pick ourselves up and keep moving forward. So that's the only recourse. It's the only recourse. And prayer, asking Krishna to give us strength to become more attached to Him. There are many examples of, we'll get to this point, of family life in Krishna consciousness, because just becoming detached, that's also a gradual process. So there is a concession. Married life in Krishna consciousness. There is a concession. If there's still some attachment, we can't just artificially give up everything, give up our association. So we spiritualize them. We can't stop eating, so we eat Krishna prasadam. We can't stop music, singing, dancing, so we just transform it, we spiritualize it by singing about Krishna, by chanting His names, by looking at His form, Radha Govinda. And in that way, our senses, our attachments can become placed onto the reality. So similarly in family life, there's a way to have spiritual family life for those who can maintain brahmachari and become sannyas or just stay brahmachari their whole life. That's glorified, but that's an exception. It's not necessarily the rule. So those who become married, there's a way to act in Krishna consciousness in marriage. And this isn't going to be a class about how to do that exactly, but some of the things that must be done in family life is to see the opposite sex. The man has to see the woman as the Devi Dasi of Krishna. And the woman has to see her husband as the Das of Krishna. And together they have to take that, instead of becoming attached to one another, they take that attachment, they direct it towards Krishna. They serve Krishna together. There are many grihastha couples who serve deities together. There are many grihastha couples who distribute books together, who preach together, who have preaching centers and spread Krishna consciousness together. And their lives are completely fulfilled in Krishna consciousness. And they can advance together in spiritual life without the dangers of becoming attached to each other, as long as they're strict in their sadhana and developing that attachment for Krishna. So simultaneously, along with seeing each other as a servant of Krishna in family life, what to speak of single life, the sadhana part is most important. Because without the sadhana, you won't be able to maintain the strength. So that's where the litmus test comes in our spiritual life. We can test our attachment to Krishna by how we're becoming attracted to chanting His names, how we're becoming attracted to hearing about Him in Bhagavad Gita, in the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, in the other Krishna book, in His pastimes. It is an art that we have to, an art form, I guess you could say, training ourselves how to hear, and hear without distraction. So I have to get to this point because Prabhupada says in a general format here that we have to transform or take the attachment and give it directed to Krishna, become attached to Krishna. But how do you become attached to Krishna? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, all the processes of devotional service are there, 9 processes. But the most important is the Shravanam, hearing. So that's why this whole morning program that we have, probably 99% of it is just hearing. We hear Mangalarti, we hear the prayers to the spiritual master, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, the prayers to Panchatattva, the prayers to Radha and Krishna. Hearing, constantly chanting our rounds with attention. When we say the 10 offenses, we sometimes say it is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. But actually, Haridas Thakur says in the Harinam Chintamani that there's a whole chapter on inattentive chanting, says that inattentive chanting is the cause of all the other offenses. If you chant inattentively, the other offenses will manifest. They'll build up steam because you're not paying attention to Krishna. And the anarthas that are in the heart, the attachments that are in the heart, will not go away. Bahujanma kariyadi shravana kirtana tabutana paya Krishna pade premadana. If one is infested with the 10 offenses in the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, he will not get the love of Godhead, which is the ultimate goal of this chanting. So even if when somebody's new, they may not be able to chant 16 rounds a day, but they can start 1 round, 4 rounds, 8 rounds, and gradually build it up. And in that process of chanting, of building up the rounds, and then even after 16 you can do further, but the principle is that we have to be attentive in the chanting and get a taste for the chanting. When we actually taste the chanting, we enter a new realm of consciousness. We start to become attached to Krishna, and this is described also in Harinam Chintamani, and other places, and by Bhakti Sunanda Saraswati explains this in some of his teachings, that the holy name of the Lord is the beginning of bhakti. Etavan evilokesmin pungsam dharma paraksmita bhakti yogo bhagavati tannama grahanadivihi. Out of all the processes of devotional service, bhakti yoga, the chanting of the holy names of the Lord is the first and most important. So by that chanting, Krishna is revealed. It's not that we're just chanting and mumbling his name and saying his name over and over, but within the chanting, the name of Krishna, the non-difference of the name of Krishna and himself, and it becomes manifested. And as we increase that attachment or awareness that the holy name is non-different from the Lord, then his form becomes manifested in our heart. Then by the continued chanting, the form, we become more and more attracted to the form and to the chanting of the name. Within the form, we starts to manifest the qualities. So first the name, then the form, and then the qualities of the Lord. And then by continued chanting, then the pastimes become revealed. Within the chanting of the holy names of the Lord, everything is revealed. So the process is actually complete within the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, without offenses. That was one of the first things Prabhupada gave his new disciples, is he personally hand-wrote the 10 offenses against the holy name. Every devotee must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema. So Krishna Prema is the goal. Attachment to Krishna is the goal. And that's the process, chanting Hare Krishna. And then we have other duties, of course. We have to serve the Guru, serve his orders, distribute his books, distribute prasadam, open temples, make more devotees. All that is part of the process of Krishna consciousness. But the intrinsic, fundamental foundation of the process is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord, and to develop one's own love for Krishna. If you don't have love for Krishna, how can you distribute it? How can you give it? If you don't have something, how can you give it? If we're not tasting love of God, it's not that necessarily that you have to reach prema to experience Krishna consciousness, but along the way you do. You get taste. Krishna gives us a little taste here and there. So unless we experience that, it will be very difficult to maintain our stability, to have the strength to continue. This is a lifelong process. I don't know, I joined when I was 16 years old. But I guess I understood that I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. We made the vows to Prabhupada, I'm going to follow these 4 regulated principles, chant 16 rounds a day. That meant for the rest of my life. But we can see that many did not do that. Many fell away. Many could not maintain that, unfortunately. So, very serious process, very serious philosophy. We're accepting this most profound, most unique, highest knowledge. Rajavidya Rajaguyam Pavitram Midamuttamam. What's the rest? Dharmyam Susukam Kartam Abhyayam. The king of knowledge, the king of education, devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Radha Govinda. This is the highest, most supreme attainment that we could ever possibly be given the opportunity to attain. So we have to stick to this process. It's a lifelong process, lifelong dedication, a lifelong activity, and along the way we'll get our rewards. No doubt we'll taste this perfection along the way. And then as we grow in realization internally, we'll realize our eternal relationship with Krishna, and at the time of our departing from this body, we'll be able to enter into the spiritual world in that relationship. But actually there's one detail that we sometimes don't always hear or stress, but it is a detail that is a fact, and Prabhupada also says this in Krishna book, that as the mature devotee progresses in spiritual life, when he reaches a certain stage in his next body, if he perfects himself in this life, in his next life, he doesn't go back to Goloka yet. He goes back or goes to the Bhoma Lila of the Lord. The Bhoma Lila of the Lord is when he comes to the material world and exhibits his pastimes here. And in that condition, or in that appearance, in that body, that whatever relationship he's accomplished, He comes in that form. It's a cowherd boy, cowherd girl, parental affection, servant, whatever, and he perfects it. He perfects that bhava, he perfects that prema, and then he goes back to Goloka and lives eternally with Krishna there. So these things we have to keep in mind. You know, we have to discuss all of the, I guess you could say, lower stuff. You know, we're not this body, and we have attachments, and we have to give up attachments, and we're not a man, we're not a woman, and we have to deal with all of that. But at the same time, simultaneously, as the Ishopanishad says, we have to cultivate knowledge and awareness of ignorance, of Maya, side by side. We have to cultivate an understanding of material nature and its powers, its functions, how it works, how it binds. And at the same time, simultaneously, we have to cultivate the awareness of Krishna, the supreme abode, Krishna's nature, his qualities, his pastimes, activities, etc. Simultaneously. So we're not just renunciants. We're not just dry renunciants. Oh, I'm not this body. I don't want any sense gratification. I'll just live in some sacred place along a pond and meditate. We're not renunciants like that. And at the same time, Srila Prabhupada also told us that we can engage everything. As he quotes the verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Anasaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjataha nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagim uchate. And this means yuktam vairagim, we engage everything in devotional service. So along the path of understanding the principle of renunciation, that we don't want to become attached to sense gratification, but we do want to become attached to things related to Krishna. And in the beginning, that could be our devotional service. It could be what we do if we love to distribute books, we love to go on Harinam, we love to worship the deities, we love to chant in Kirtan. That is the real renunciation. And then as the internal realizations grow, our love for Krishna will grow. And that is the goal. We want to develop that love for Krishna, Krishna prema. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna prema pradayate, Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya namne goda tvishe namaha. This is the great benediction Lord Chaitanya gave to distribute and give and experience Krishna prema, love of God. So that is the process for becoming detached within family life or renounced life. Either one, the process is to become attached to Krishna. Yeah, I'll stop here. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak here. I'm only trying to do the same thing that I'm saying. I'm not perfect in any way. Any questions or comments? Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you very much. So the topic came that we should have meditation, that it's a long life and we have to be very steady and determined to keep up the process till the end of life. And one way to do it is just by I'm just determined to do it and I'm just doing it as a duty. But my question would be, like, you're practicing Krishna consciousness for a long time. What were the things that actually gave you enthusiasm, inspiration to go on?
Yeah. Well, I have to honestly admit I've had my ups and downs too. And then we all may have that to one extent or another, greater or lesser. But the things that have kept me, so I joined in 1972. And the things that kept me in Krishna consciousness were really what I said, hearing the philosophy, hearing the chanting, getting a taste for the chanting. Those are the things that kept me going. One thing that really gave me a lot of strength was hearing Prabhupada chant japa. I love to hear Prabhupada chant japa, especially during the japa time. But hearing also has different stages, I find. You know, you can also just hear mechanically and repeat, right? You can memorize verses and memorize this, but hearing and seeing is different. You can see by hearing, Shastra Chakshus, seeing by hearing. So I find now when I try to hear a narration or a book or Prabhupada's books, or even just hearing the Bhāgavatam or Chaitanya Charitamrita narration without the purports even, is that you can enter actually the purpose that you actually can enter into that being there. You can practically be there in the presence of all the associates of the Lord and feel what they're experiencing and sense what they are experiencing or within their hearts, and what the Lord is feeling. And you completely can leave the material world just by hearing these pastimes. And frankly, also in the chanting of Hare Krishna, when you come to the point of understanding or awakening to the pastime phase, it's also good to once you've heard these pastimes, they're in your heart, and those are the pastimes that begin to manifest in the chanting. So for me, hearing has always been the thing that has enlivened me the most, that kept me going the most. Hearing and preaching also, because speaking what you have heard also brings realizations. Last night I was at the 26th Second Avenue. They asked me to speak there. So one lady was there, she asked the question, because I quoted the verse from Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya chaham hridi sanavishto matak smritir jnanam apohanam cha. Krishna is the source of knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. And she was trying to understand what kind of forgetfulness God or Krishna gives us. So by explaining it to her, I don't want to get into the whole explanation here, because I didn't really have a solid answer. You know, Krishna makes us forget him. You know, that's one way of saying. Or she was also saying, why can't we remember our previous births? If we're supposed to learn from our previous experiences, then why do we forget our previous lives and then we just basically start at ground zero again? So while I was explaining it to her, I was getting realizations, and I came up with 2 or 3 different perspectives on the whole thing, and she was satisfied. But I hadn't thought about those things before. So speaking or preaching is also another very enlivening that keeps you going. So that's also part of the Shravanam, Kirtanam, and then Smaranam, because by hearing and then chanting, then there's remembering. And the remembering is not just in the mind, it has to go deep into the heart. Deep remembrance of Krishna and our relationship with him. Even if we don't understand, if I'm a cowherd boy or whatever, just understanding Krishna as he is, as we learn from Bhagavad Gita and from our acharyas, understanding Krishna as he is and meditating and thinking, remembering him. That comes from hearing and chanting. If we don't hear, what are we going to remember? So that was the most enlivening thing for me. Yes, Marie.
Thank you, Prabhu. It was so many nice reminders, and I learned so many things as well. And my question was similar to his. Actually, he asked the second part of my question, which was, what made you come and what made you stay? So, what made you come, if you don't mind?
What made me come? Probably, well, I became attracted to yoga when I was about 12 years old. Because in those days, 1960s, 70s, the hippie thing was very prominent. And part of that whole culture, hippie culture, was, the Eastern influence. Ravi Shankar and Indian music and incense and sitars and chants. And there were gurus around, Swami Satchitananda and Guru Maharajji and this one and that one. And so people were running after these phony gurus. It's like Yudhisthira, you have to tell a lie. This isn't a lie. These gurus. And I also went to see many of these gurus. I never got much out of it. Meher Baba, another one, the Mona guru, silent guru. I used to see the devotees chanting in the streets of New York also. And at a certain point, I met the devotees and I got invited to the temple, which at that time was on Henry Street, right here in Brooklyn. And I just kept coming. I couldn't, it was so attractive. Krishna consciousness was so attractive. And I was still in high school. So I finished high school, and then I moved into the temple, disappointed my parents, and never just stayed. I stayed a brahmachari for 16 years. And then I got married. But the things that attracted me, I could get into a whole explanation, like I did this last night also. Everywhere I go, people want to know what was life like in ISKCON in the 1960s and 70s. And if you see that building on Henry Street, it's just a two-sided, there's two entrances. It's just a brownstone like all the others in Brooklyn. But there were 100 devotees living in that temple. 100 men and women living in that temple. And one part was the temple room. It was 3 or 4 floors, and the men on the top of one, the women on the top of another. We had 2 showers on each side. Everybody slept on the floor. We didn't own anything. Had no clothes. We didn't own any. We didn't even own a dhoti. There would be a laundry room. And every morning you would go to the laundry room to get your towel, your dhoti, your kopans, your kurta. And that was it for the day. And then at night, you'd throw all the dirty stuff into a big bin, and then the next morning you get a new set. And whatever you did own, maybe you had a few books or a pair of socks, you'd put it in a cubby. Those cubbies, they're lined up one on top of the other across little square cubby holes. And all the things would be in one cubby. So why did we do that? What kind of attraction did we have that would make us give everything up, give up our educations, our futures, our plans, our lives for, shaving our heads and wearing orange robes and white robes and saris and going out into the street and dancing and chanting for 10 hours a day? So we did that. So what attracted? Of course, Prabhupada attracted us. His books, his demeanor, his purity, that certainly gave us the power to be able to do that. I mean, nowadays it's a little different because we don't, stress living in the temple, giving up everything and surrendering everything. We don't do that as much anymore. But those who can, why not? So there has to be, now we've just expanded the devotee categories, or different types of devotees at different levels. So it's expanded from full-time living in the temple devotees. We have so many devotees who live outside, who have families and who work. And in those days, we used to call those kind of devotees fringies. That's what we call them. If you left the temple, you blooped. The word bloop comes from Prabhupada, came up with that word bloop. He said it's the sound of a drop of water falling into a bowl of water. If you drop a drop of water into a bowl, it goes bloop. That's the sound of the spirit soul falling into Maya. So if someone left the temple for any reason, oh, I want to go see my parents, I want to do this or that. Oh, he's blooping. It was black or white. Now it's not like that, but isn't that, thank God? And, so that's how I was attracted, and probably everyone. And probably now also. People are attracted to Prabhupada now because of his books, to the chanting, to all these things. Prasadam, the secret weapon. Yes, Mataji. We're going a little overtime here.
If you can shed some light on, I was thinking about where it says a woman's attachment to her husband may elevate her at the time of death, but a man's attachment to his wife will degrade him. So, to know on a more mundane level, of course, as a devotee, you understand that this material bodies, they don't apply, because we understand that the big Krishna and the desires. But on a more mundane level, we're in Kali Yuga, and it's difficult to find good men, and the women have to take, on the role as a man to protect yourself, to survive. And it was also saying that every living entity is actually being classified as a woman because we're all property. So it's kind of a little bit contradictory to me. And then also, if you could shed some light.
Yeah. We will never be able to satisfy the material conceptions of the modern world with Vedic conceptions. It's just impossible. We have to become, someone has to become sufficiently purified and educated and aware of things in order to understand, the male body and the female body, the differences, is one higher, one lower. In this day and age, people can't, we're looking for this equality, but the bodies are different. So male body is in one category, female is another category, but it's not a question of discrimination or degradation. But if we understand Vedic culture and some of the wisdom there, if we understand the cycle of birth and death, we're going through stages. then we can kind of accept that. You know, so if a woman becomes attached to a man in the Vedic system, she goes to where the man is. She gets a man's body, or she follows him to his destination. I don't know if she takes birth as a woman again to serve her husband again in that next birth appearance. But if she thinks of a man, Prabhupada says she'll become a man, and that elevates. But if a man thinks of a woman at the time of a death, his wife, then that's degradation, because he goes to the form of a woman, which Prabhupada explains in the purports also. It's more difficult to advance in the body of a woman than in the body of a man. No, I can't explain the psychology or the psychological reasons for all of that, but there are reasons but then you can say that in the Vedic culture, that's how it was designed. But Prabhupada also gives a caveat that if a woman and a man, or a woman alone or a man becomes attached to Krishna, then they can go back to Godhead. So Krishna consciousness is above even the Vedic principles. It's above even the Vedic principles. So sometimes Prabhupada has to speak from the Vedic perspective, and then sometimes he speaks from the Krishna consciousness perspective, because both are valid. Both are valid. It's not that we just come to Krishna consciousness and man and woman serve Krishna together and everything's the same and we can, dance and sing together in the temple room in circles, men and women. Well, we can't do that. We can't do that. But men and women can dance and sing in the temple room separately. So there are certain restrictions, there are certain elements of etiquette and like that we have to continue to follow, even though we know we're not this body. We can't say, I'm not this body, therefore, I'll stand with the women during Mangal Arti and chant with the women. We can't do that. It's inappropriate. Now, at a later phase, in the spiritual world, there are men and women. They're all associating together. They're all serving Narayan or Vishnu or whatever form, Krishna, together. The women are more beautiful than here in the material world. The men are more beautiful. Matter of fact, the men have a forearm form that looks like the Lord, completely attractive. But no one is attracted to each other. They just are attracted to the Lord. But we can't imitate that here in this material world. So the second part was, we have to stop it. What was the second part again? I summarized the whole thing together, right? Okay, I think I covered that. I hope that, it's always a point of contention, this man-woman thing in the material world in general. You know the story, Indra's daughter? She wanted to, the demigod, what was the story? Yes, Shukracharya was performing penances to get the, what is that, Shakti, that weapon to revive the dead asuras. What is it called? Yes, say again? It's something Jivani. Anyway, he was performing these extremely austere penances to get this power from Shiva, that he could revive the asuras if they were killed in a battle. So Indra's daughter decided that she was going to try to break Shukracharya's vow. And by Indra said, this is not you cannot do this, you're my daughter, you're a woman, you're not supposed to take this kind of responsibility, etc., etc., etc. So, what was my point here? Anyway, so even, oh yes, my point was that even in the heavenly planets, you know, she was defying the usual customary etiquette of a woman, what to speak of the daughter of Indra, to take it upon herself to do something that a woman should not do. It was not her duty to go try to make Shukracharya fall down from his austerity. So even amongst the demigods, the women have some, you know, concept of being independent. So see, it goes on in this material world, man, woman, because we all have this idea of being the enjoyer. We can't understand it. We can't accept our position. Can't accept our position. Gopi Bharatur Padakamalayur Das 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 Anudas. If we just realize that, we won't have to worry about whether I'm a man or a woman. Can I do what this man is doing? Can I be this or that? No such thing. I'm just a servant of Krishna. We have to get rid of the material conceptions. That's the bottom line. Not an easy task, but that's the bottom line. Serve Krishna together. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki jai.
Sunanda Prabhu ki jai.